Hey kids and parents, welcome to the Makers ACT English Program Thanksgiving and Winter Seminar. I'll be your English teacher, ACT English teacher here at Makers, Jin Bae. Guys, in this video, I wanted to really talk about two simple but important things. So first, I wanted to give some information about the course for both the concept level and also for the practice test level. And secondly is I wanted to talk a little bit about goal setting and change and transformation. I know it sounds a little bit awkward to put that into this kind of video, but I thought it was kind of important and relevant. So let's go ahead and get started. So in this section, you guys, I want to give you an idea of how students will actually learn, right, for both the concept and the practice test classes. So there is going to be a difference, and that's really based off of the level of the student. In the concept class, most of the students here have no ACT experience, and a lot of the students here kind of struggle. They don't have a solid English base, so they have some difficulty, right, with just English in general. So really thinking about the types of students that join this class, I wanted to design a class that was really that really gave them the sort of knowledge and the tools, right, the skill set to perform within the 80th percentile, right, on the ACT English test. So designing this class, I really focused on three main parts of this course. The in-class experience, the homework experience, and the mock exam experience, right? So talk first, discussing kind of what happens in class. You know, in class, I wanted to focus on two main things. First is just having students learn all 17 concepts and question types that the ACT English section tests. And secondly is really teaching students, right, some really useful tricks, tips, and strategies to help them to become a better test taker. Yeah. Because over the last few years or so, right, I've probably taken over 100 ACT exams, right? That's over 7,000 questions. And so analyzing these questions and these tests, right, I've identified, I've broken down, I've deconstructed the test, right, and identified 17 core concepts and question types the ACT asks, right, categorizing them into two. The first relates to grammar, right? So there's going to be 8 different concepts or question types that are tested on grammar. What's really important about grammar is learning the grammar rules, right, which we'll cover. The second part has to do with what's called rhetoric, right? Rhetoric, if you're not familiar with it, is just the art of writing. So it's about the diction, right? The word choice that an author uses. It's about the structure of a paragraph, right? It's about the message, the purpose, right, of an essay, right? Those are all things that relates to, the rhetoric. And so over the course of this class, students will be familiar with all 17 of these question types and concepts. Yeah. But I think something that's a little bit more important, right, are the tips and strategies, right, that I help students learn to become better test takers, right? So what we'll do is I'll teach you guys some of the sort of key words, right, to look out for, which will help you to solve questions a little bit more efficiently, right? If you know anything about the ACT exam, you know that they have patterns, right? Oftentimes the ACT will use common wording, right, in an answer choice, right? So once you can spot or recognize those words, you can cross out the answer choice immediately, right, without having to think, right, which will help you to save time as well as save some of your mental energy. I'll also give you guys some tips and strategies about how, when you're stuck between two answer choices, about how to make guesses, right? How to make educated, smart guesses, right? That'll lead you to the correct answer the majority of the times. Now, the second part of the learning process, right, takes place at home, and so when designing the homework, I really wanted to focus on knowledge, right? Is building students' knowledge base and building the fundamental skill sets that they need to use or apply the knowledge, right, when they're solving questions. So our homework is going to be relatively simple, right? We're going to focus on, reading and studying an ACT English textbook, as well as solving hundreds, right, if not close to 1,000 practice questions, right, from actual ACT English exams. Now, this textbook is pretty unique, right? It's special. You can't get this textbook anywhere else, right? You can only get it here at Makers, and that's because, I wrote it, right? So I spent the last few months, really, probably over 200 hours or so, really designing or writing, right, a very focused, specialized, right, textbook, right, that's designed just for the ACT English section. Right, and so throughout this textbook, students will they'll read about and they'll learn different rules for grammar, right? They'll also learn about the different ways that a concept can be tested, right? Because even though you're talking about the same general concept, let's say pronouns, right? You could be tested on pronouns in 3 or 4 different ways, right? So we'll also cover that in the textbook, right? As well as, right, like a step-by-step process, right, of how I, right, solve all of the different question types, right? So I think this really gives students an insight into how my mind works step by step, right, when I'm solving these ACT English questions. Okay, so students will be learning, they'll be reading, taking notes from their textbook. The third part of the class, you guys, really has to do with mock exams. So it's practicing like the actual test. And so every Saturday, right, concept class kids, right, will be taking a real exam on the computer. So the look and feel of the test will be just like if you were sitting down at the ACT testing center and taking the real thing. So I think this part of this class is really important because it gives students, it'll help them to kind of get used to or familiar, right, with that sort of atmosphere or that real test environment. It'll also help them to manage their time, right, when they're working through certain questions, okay? And guys, the goal for the concept class, right, is to be able to take students from getting about 40 questions wrong or so, right, at the start of the class, right, to no more than about 15 questions wrong, And so if you aim for this goal, which seems kind of reasonable, right, instead of trying to get a perfect score, right, why not fewer than 15? Right? If you're getting fewer than 15 wrong on the ACT English test, you're going to be scoring in about the 80th, 85th percentile, right, among all test takers. And that's a pretty good place to be, right, after about a month or so of taking this test. And so I think the concept class is going to be perfect, right, for kids who want to go from no experience, right, to having about an 85th percentile, right, sort of ability, for this test. Now this is going to be very different from the Shichunban classes, right, the practice test classes. And that's really because the level of students is going to be different. So a lot of our Shichunban kids, they have a very solid English base. And a lot of them, most of them, right, do have some ACT experience, right? Although there are many cases in which students have no ACT experience. Maybe they studied SAT and they're just transferring over to the ACT. So the design of this class is going to be very different, right, from the concept class. Now, when designing the practice test class, I really wanted to focus on a 2-step process for the students' in-class experience, right? So the first is going to be really about repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill, right? Repetition is what helps take people who are just ordinary or average, right, to mastery. So if you want to become a master, right, of this test, you're going to have to practice. So practicing like the actual exam is a great way to do that. Second way is reviewing, right? So it's not enough just to take practice test after practice test after practice test. You have to actually cover, right, or review the test that you took, right, which is what we're going to really focus on, right, in class. Now, again, just like with the concept class kids, students here are going to take computer-based, right, ACT exams. Again, it'll help students to get familiar with the look and feel of the test, as well as help them to manage their time, right? And so they'll be real comfortable stepping into the actual test. Now, after students take a practice exam, they're going to get a report, right? They're going to get a daily report. And I think this is great because it provides a very detailed analysis of the question types that are asked, right? And how students performed, right, on certain question types. So for example, here we notice this student performed a little bit poorly, right, on punctuation. So that's not one of his or her strong suits. Also, this question will, or this report will also label or alert you on the number of questions, or the question numbers that you got wrong, right? And this would be great. It'll help you to it saves a lot of time from having to self-correct, right? So we can jump more into the important stuff, right? Which is the in-class review. Now, the in-class review is a time that students should take very seriously, right? This is a time where they're asking questions, right? They're reflecting upon their experiences, right? And they're really trying to learn knowledge more deeply. So what I do with this in-class review time, right, is I'll take all of the questions that all of the students missed, combined, and I'll cover, right, every single question. And what I'll do with my explanations, though, is I like to break down the questions into its fundamental parts, right? So question number 38, right, is specifically relating to the concept of verb forms. And so I'll teach students the fundamental knowledge that they need to learn, right, for this concept. And this will happen for all of the concepts or the questions that these students miss. I'll also talk about strategy, right? I'll give you guys certain tips and tools about what to look for in the passage, right? The non-underlined words, those kinds of clues, I'll also help you to recognize and identify, right? To help you get to the correct answer the majority of times, right? So that'll be the in-class experience, right? Now, what do students do here, right, for homework? Yeah. So even the design of the homework is going to have a different focus than the design of the homework for the concept level class, right? So the concept level class is all about building the knowledge base, right? And the fundamental skill sets. But for the Shichang level classes, the main focus here is all about improvement, right? It's all about improvement. You cannot treat You cannot treat my homework for the ACT English section the same way you would for your school homework, right? I know that most kids, right, when they do school homework, they're just trying to finish. They're just trying to finish, right? But you can't treat this homework just like that, right? Instead, you really have to focus on improvement, right? Improvement, getting better every single day. Yeah, look, guys, your homework isn't gonna change. Right? Your homework is going to be these three things time and time again, right? And so you really want to dig in, really focus in on, right, improving yourself, right, or getting better though, right? Based off of the homework that you're given. Yeah, and again, the homework is going to be broken down into three main parts, right? So we basically have, read and learn, we have review and reflect, and we have isolate and train. So with the first part, the reading part, again, all of the students here are going to get a copy of my textbook, yeah? And I think this will be a great way to study the test, They can do it from the comfort of their own home. They can take as much time reading. They can read real slowly and carefully. They can also take notes while reading, right? It'll really help them to study the test, right? It'll also be a great chance for students to maybe review some of the old concepts that they're already familiar with, but to learn it better. It can also help students to learn new concepts, new strategies, right? New processes that can help them become better test takers, right? Another part of this reading section that I really emphasize is taking notes, I think just simply writing things down that are important to you are going to help you to remember it, sometimes even up to 90% better, right? So making sure that you're writing notes, I'll check for that. I'll check for that as well every single day. The second part is going to be the review section. Now, although we do cover the questions that all of the students missed in class, right? I also want students to review and reflect on the test that they took at home. And so when they're reviewing, you're not just looking over the test loosely, right? Like lightly. Instead, you're really taking a lot of time, right, to think about this test. To think about, right, what they're testing you on more deeply, think about how they're trying to test you, right? And also writing down your thoughts. This is a wonderful example of a student who took excellent notes while reviewing her test. She wrote down her thoughts not only on questions that she got wrong, but she also wrote down her thoughts on the questions that she got correct as well, right? It's that kind of reflection and analysis, right? That's going to really help you to improve, okay? I'll also check that daily as well. And the third part is all about isolating and training. So we talked about your student report that you'll get at the end of after you take the test. I'll also get one of these for every single student. And I like to take a lot of time to analyze, right, the student's report. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at certain concepts that the student had trouble with this time, right? So for example, only got 6 out of 9 questions correct for verbs and missed 9 questions, right, for purpose and strategy. So taking that information, right, we can isolate those concepts. And what I'll do here is I'll create, right, I actually create sample questions. I'll actually create practice questions that are related to these concepts, right, but just asked in different ways, of course. So this will really help students to kind of personalize their learning, right? So instead of students getting the exact same homework, or all the students getting the exact same homework, right? Some students will be getting, the same homework. Others will be getting different ones, right? Just based on how they performed on that test, right? So it really helps to personalize or individualize the learning, which I think is really important, right? Because we all have our unique strengths and weaknesses, right? So being able to tap into that to improve our weaknesses, right, is going to be huge. It's a huge part of this class. Now you guys, a couple more things before I actually finish here is, the first is this. Look, the most important goal that I set for myself as a teacher is to help every single student get fewer than 5 wrong, right, in the Shicheng class. I know it's kind of a big goal, right? I know some students, right, are kind of afraid because they think it's unachievable, but I've seen it done time and time and time again, right? However, what I have learned from experience is that goals don't mean anything, right? They're meaningless unless you have the right systems in place to succeed, okay? If you take a simple example about 2 people who have the exact same goal of winning, let's say, a gold medal, right, in the Olympics. One person actually succeeds and gets the gold medal, the other person finishes last, right? What made the difference? It wasn't the goal, right? They had the same goals. What differentiates whether or not a person succeeds or doesn't, right, is all about their habits, their routines, their processes, right? And that's really what the system is. There's a wonderful quote that I love, right, that says, you don't rise to the level of your goals. Instead, you fall to the level of your systems. So you have to make sure that you have the right systems in place. And what I know to the core of my being is, if you guys do have the right systems, change is possible, right? Massive transformation is possible. I've seen this happen many times, hundreds of students though, right? And what I want to do here is just go over one simple example of a student who kind of made that massive transformation with an ACT English score. So I kind of erased parts of the person's name for privacy reasons. But you'll notice the parts of the name remain the same, but the dates will kind of change, right? So this student started off day 1 getting about 28 questions wrong, right, on the English test. That wasn't necessarily a bad score. It put him in about maybe the 75th percentile or so, but applying the systems. This student was very diligent. He was taking notes in class, right? He was doing his homework every single night. He would even ask questions after class, after just about a week or so. So same person, right? Just at a different date, about 7 days later or 6 days later. 7 days later or so, this person went from getting about 28 wrong to reducing that by half, getting only about 14 wrong, right? And that was just after about a week or so. Now, I can't show you this student's report every single day because it'll take a long time. But if we fast forward, right, to about after the 3rd week, this person again, was coming to class curious, right? Is being very, very diligent, hardworking, right? Going above and beyond, And after about the 3rd week or so, started to notice massive improvement and transformation to his score, right? So in starting off 28 wrong, now getting down to about 3, right? And after about a month or so after he started, he was consistently getting fewer than 5 wrong, And so my purpose for giving you this example isn't to try to impress you, but it's really try to impress upon you, right, that change is possible, right? But in order for you to change, you got to have the right systems, right, in place. Here's one more thing before I go, is this. I want to know, whether or not, right, you're ready and you're willing, right, to maximize your potential, right, to master the ACT. By the end of this course, you should have the knowledge, the skills to become a better test taker, and you'll definitely have the experience and the confidence, right, to achieve your ACT scores. So if you feel, if this message kind of appeals to you, right, then guys, I'll see you in the next semester for class, right? Hope this video wasn't too long, but I wanted to thank you guys, for joining me here, for this intro video. Take care and have a blessed day.